All right, welcome. Again, my name is Manuel Chinea. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Popular Bank, and with me is Eli Mendoza. Eli?
Hey, I'm Eli Mendoza. I'm partner and COO of Cirrus Capital. Nice to be here.
All right, today we're going to talk about the inflationary pressures in a post-COVID economy. As you know, there's been an extraordinary amount of federal government stimulus pumped into the economy. And already the economy has started to grow at unprecedented pace. And that will inevitably, it's good, obviously, that we're growing and we're seeing a lot of economic activity, but that certainly will create some inflationary pressures. And the idea of this discussion is to talk a little bit about what are some of the areas that small businesses need to be on the lookout for, given what's happening with what some might call a heated economy. And I think that we're going to talk a little bit about some of the areas, and then Eli and I will go and discuss each one of those topics. Already, there's been increases in the cost of goods, cost of raw materials. There's been increases in construction costs. Already, there is some pressure on wages as more and more people get back to work, and there's more dislocation in the labor market. I think that we talked in the previous session about some of the trends that we're seeing in the labor market of more and more people quitting their jobs and moving to a different area, and that's obviously creating some pressure on the labor market. And there's some pressure, some opportunities in the area of occupancy, real estate costs, and we also want to talk a little bit about interest rates and what might be happening with interest rates and what that could mean for obviously small businesses. So any thoughts, Eli, you want to kick us off with any thoughts that you might regarding any of those topics?
Well, first, I mean, at a high level, as I listen to you talk about all the different dimensions, right, of inflation and the acceleration of economic activity, just given the support that's in place from the government, it kind of reminds me of the conversation that we had as we were going through the pandemic, in that there's a great deal of opportunity potentially, but a lot of challenges ahead as well, and a lot of unknown, right? I guess the good practice of understand your business, be ready from just financial health perspective to deploy capital or to be ready to plan to deploy capital. Plan frequently, because this is a rapidly changing environment. And while everybody expects inflation means a lot of different things in the context of running your business. And so you have to be ready, right? And, begin to plan in smaller increments and time increments, so that you've got the ability to actually react much more dynamically to what's happening. And once you get a beat on what might be playing out long term, then make a more fulsome commitment to the strategy. So to me, it starts with kind of the same principles that we talked about before. You just have to stay on top of things, be aware of the business, understand the customers, where their heads are at, what behavior is changing in them, where are your employees in all of this, and what does the environment look like for you in the next 6 months? Because beyond that, it's going to be pretty challenging to call. But have scenarios in the back of your mind, right, so that you're not caught flat-footed. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was going to say that everything you're saying makes a lot of sense. It's spot on. I wanted to start talking about some of the specific areas that we mentioned, and take, for instance, that with labor and wages. And one of the things that talked about in one of our prior series was the fact that there's this time for the past year and a half, a lot of people had a lot of opportunity to reflect what really matters to them, working from home, that balance of quality of life type of balance. And as was mentioned in the prior series, we are seeing the labor market seeing an unprecedented level of quit rate in the market, because people are trying to make changes and they feel more confident because the economy is doing so well. One of the things as a small business, you need to shore up and put your arms around your key talent,
Mhm.
because it is that is true for any business.
Yeah.
But when you're a small business and you have fewer employees, the effect of losing a key talent is disproportionately bigger
Yeah.
in a smaller organization. And one of the things that I know some companies are doing, I know that in our case we're doing that too, is taking a look and trying to be proactive
Mhm.
and assessing your compensation and in the work environment the work experience that you provide, the employee experience you provide, and trying to make adjustments proactively and not wait for your key talent to get curious, to start kind of testing the waters and seeing what
Yeah.
else is out there. And it might, in the short term, might cost you more to make certain
Mhm.
changes and make
Yeah.
some adjustments in terms of
Yeah.
compensation. But that will still be a fraction of what the cost will be if you lose some key talent in terms of
Right.
revenue loss, in terms of having to replace that talent. You'll
Mhm.
probably have to go to a market that is a
Mhm.
heated market and have to
Mhm.
end up paying more than what you were
Right.
paying before. So one of the things that you can be doing as a small business in that particular area is
Mhm.
anticipation of this heated market, is really put your arms around your key talent and make sure that they have a very good reason to stay with
Yeah.
you and
Yeah.
not tempted to jump ship and at this point and go somewhere else, because the cost will be much greater if that happens to you.
Yeah. Yeah, look, that's a terrific point. I think, taken to the extreme also, just given how again, to the point you made, disproportionate the negative effect could be for a small business when a key employee or employees leave. I mean, it is best case, right? You have somebody, you find somebody, you replace the folks that left, they're at a higher cost, right? There's the risk of onboarding and fit and performance, which is a great unknown. And the worst case is you set yourself back, months, let's say competitively, and it'll have a real impact on the long-term sustainability of your business potential. It's, absolutely very important to, as you said, keep your arms wrapped around your employees, and do it proactively. Start thinking now, right, about how do I treat folks? What are they saying today about the short term and wanting to go back? Or how do I deploy them against what I need to accomplish from a business perspective and try to accommodate, and give them the vision and give them or communicate to them that you're there and supportive for them. And they're going through some pretty uncertain times too. So if you could remove as much anxiety and uncertainty from their minds as possible, I think that's great. Look, I think you're also competing with, and depends on what end of the political spectrum you're in, right? So some folks are talking about the fact that, so much federal funding is squeezing out labor force participation. Folks are saying, well, no, it's really about still the uncertainty around what returning to the office means, right? How safe is it really to go back to take a subway to work, to spend time in commute, right, or around a lot of people in buildings, et cetera. And so that's what's causing also anxiety and kind of just fragility in the workforce. Whatever it is, right, who you have today are the most precious resources, right, that you'll have in, for quite a long time. So absolutely take care of them.
Yeah, absolutely, Eli. And the other thing is that on the flip side, if you have plans for possibly expansion or growing your business it could also be a great opportunity for you to pick up some talent market, because I think there's an openness of doing something new that if you are a little more deliberate and proactive, you might also be, on the flip side, able to add some really great talent which is a big positive as well.
Yeah. By being defensive with your existing talent allows you to be on the offense, right, for new talent. If not everybody's doing what you described.
Yeah.
And also,
go ahead.
I was just going to finish the thought on growth opportunities, because what I was also going to say around employees is now is the time for expansion, right? It is a great story for people. And so I think taking care of existing employees, everything you said is very, very valid, but also grow your business, right? And nothing makes folks feel more comfortable than knowing that the business that they're working in has viability and the potential for success, right? And so, as a leader, that's an important element as well. So.
No, absolutely. I think that it's human nature. You want to feel that you're part of something that is growing and thriving.
Yeah.
I think that from that perspective, going into being part of an economy that is on the recovery and an accelerated recovery path, it presents opportunities for people. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your thoughts on real estate costs as well as opportunities. Obviously, there's been, depending on the market, some markets were very affected by the pandemic, and as a result, a lot of rents and obviously, sadly, a lot of businesses failed in some of the high dense urban markets, and as a result, it kind of put a lot of pressure on rent prices and real estate prices. It's not the same across the entire country. Just like in New York, there was a lot of pressure on the rents and real estate prices. In places like Florida and Texas, the opposite is true. So it cannot be the same across the entire country, but it does present some opportunities, right? And for some of the small businesses to perhaps renegotiate some of the extend terms and a better rate lock in, because the rents and the occupancy and the real estate starting to recover. So those that window for to obtain better rates is probably going to start closing. So hasn't already. So I think that's an opportunity for businesses to their cost infrastructure. So look at real estate and occupancy opportunities. And I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple dimensions to it, right? One is, and depending on the type of business, right? But one is there a new real estate strategy given the post-pandemic work environment? Meaning, do you need as big a real estate footprint today than you needed, right? Or you thought you needed when you went into before the pandemic hit? And I think the answer for a lot of people is that maybe the real estate footprint that they own doesn't need to be what it was, right? Or what it was projecting to be. And that, again, given how successful we've been at remote and doing things in a more distributed way, that there are ways to save on real estate costs by just being more distributed, either across one city, one location, multiple locations, to take advantage of the fact that you could now have a much more diverse and dispersed workforce. So I think there's an element of that's at play in all of the real estate conversations, right? Second, though, to your point, I mean, especially if you're thinking about inflation, right, and you're thinking about the cost 6, 12, 18 months from now, I think in the conversation that we had earlier, you were pointing out how good businesses were at securing liquidity through the pandemic. And I think I'd venture to say that balance sheets are pretty healthy. So if you have a point of view that you understand, or you have a point of view around your real estate strategy over the course of the next 18 months, you may want to lean a little bit into this phenomenon that you just pointed out, that there is an opportunity now, perhaps, to be aggressive and to get better pricing for at least a few year period and lower that cost structure in anticipation of what's probably going to be rising rents, right, in a more inflationary environment. So you could probably afford to take a little bit of risk if your balance sheets are healthy and you have a real estate strategy that you think is largely locked down.
And that's and you brought up your earlier point. I hadn't thought about that as much, but you're absolutely right. And I think that especially in light of most companies providing some degree of flexibility in terms of hybrid models of people working sometime remote in person, dedicated, you probably need to rethink workspace, right? And the notion of dedicated spaces. So you might be able with a smaller footprint to accommodate a larger workforce because your workforce is not going to be there all at the same time. So I think that that's also an opportunity for small businesses to rethink their costs associated to
Yeah.
occupancy and real
Yeah.
estate.
Yeah. No, that's right.
And in terms of the other topic that we talked about, and I know that that's a little more difficult to control, is the whole issue around, and that's already has been happening, is the issue of raw materials and
Yeah.
and construction costs, because obviously we're going into again a period of economic expansion. And some people might be thinking of, expanding their business, but
Yeah.
now you are dealing with a higher cost of the cost of goods is higher, raw materials, the cost of carrying inventory is higher, and then if you're expanding construction costs, everything is going to be higher. So, what are some of the thoughts or things that small businesses could be trying to do or think about that could
Yeah.
help mitigate some of those?
Yeah. Well, so I spent a lot of time in M&A, so I'm gonna give a slightly skewed answer. I think we talked about balance sheets being pretty healthy, so people being good about conserving cash, doing everything they needed to do to be cautious through the lockdown, I'll call it, and now raising their head, looking at opportunities, and thinking strategically about their plans and how to deploy the capital. I think back to your point, raw materials have already seen a pretty significant increase. I think, I'm not an economist. My experience however, is that it's temporary, right? Or at least a good portion of that raw material inflation, it seems to be temporary because of the fact that, businesses like the ones that we're talking to today were cautious and they shut down or they slowed down the rate and pace of production, right, over the course of the pandemic. But spending kind of kept going, right? The government pumped a lot of dollars into the economy. And so you had a supply chain that was contracting, right, to be safe and dealing with COVID. And a lot of supply chain issues came about because supply chains connote different geographies and distribution that just naturally slowed down when people weren't physically able to do the jobs. But the spend continued. And so the spend ate up the inventory, and the production through the pandemic couldn't keep up, right? And so now we're all kind of getting back to work. I think the spending is even, is going to go more aggressive. And so it will probably take longer for the supply chain to open up and catch up. But I believe there's light at the end of the tunnel. So if you have a plan and your balance sheet is okay, and you think there's market opportunities for you in this expansion phase of what we're about to go through, then again, like before, be a little aggressive with the capital, right? Go out and secure goods, secure inventory, get in front of the list of things that you need to expand on your business and use a little bit of the cash that you have. If you don't think you're in that kind of position, then I might think that this is a great opportunity to think about partnerships or mergers, right? Where combining with somebody or partnering with somebody to lower the cost of acquisition of a customer is the next best thing to do if you don't have capital available to expand. Just make it cheaper to secure customers and to deliver to them, right? Through partnerships or acquisitions, given the synergies that usually come from those kinds of actions.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and I think that one article that I recently read in one of the business publications was that sometimes, obviously, you want to be more assertive and sometimes it pays off to be a little more cautious. And I think that, to your point, the whole issue around supply chain, it was more of a temporary phenomenon. And they were talking in this article that some of people that started hoarding some of the raw materials actually have ended up now taking losses because the supply chain has started to open up and prices to normalize.
Yeah.
You want to try to be deliberate about what you do and you
Yeah.
plan ahead, but at the same time, I think maintaining some level of caution and
Yeah.
the moves is also healthy. And I think that to your point, as the supply chain opens up and if people have a healthy balance sheet and there's opportunities for them to grow, they should not be afraid to take the leap and make the investment. I was saying before, if you have a healthy balance sheet, this is a good time. The economy is there's a lot of economic activity. It's an expanding economy, and if there's an opportunity for the business for you to grow the business, you should absolutely take advantage of that opportunity and not be afraid to make the investments and get going.
Yeah. Hey, can I ask you a question from a bank perspective? Are you seeing customers come in and revisit their financing or their loans and take them higher rates?
Yeah, no, actually, and maybe that's the last topic in terms of the consequences of this inflationary pressure is what is going to happen with interest rates. Welcome. Again, my name is Manuel Chinea. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Popular Bank, and with me is Eli Mendoza. Eli?
Hey, I'm Eli Mendoza. I'm partner and COO of Cirrus Capital. Nice to be here. From a bank perspective, are you seeing customers come in and revisit their financing or their loans and take them higher rates?
Yeah, no, actually, and maybe that's the last topic in terms of the consequences of this inflationary pressure is what is going to happen with interest rates. And it hasn't happened yet, but it is likely the pressure and as the economy continues to heat up, there will be pressure for the Fed to start increasing rates, and that will obviously increase the cost of financing. We already are seeing, I think that this is the opportunity, and we're seeing it. Many customers are coming to the bank and saying, okay, I want to term this out. I have this outstanding debt. I want to refinance and the debt, but I want to term it out longer term. It's an incredibly attractive market in terms of low rates. So it's a great opportunity for small businesses to try to secure more favorable financing costs for a longer period of time. But that window is going to start closing soon. There's already been some movement in rates, and again, it just takes the Fed to come out with one single pronouncement that they are going to change their view on rates and inflation and rates for the market to start moving very quickly. And that could happen, in the span of a few weeks or a few months, or it could be another year before it happens. But it is likely, given the economic activity that is expected, that it probably will start happening before the end of the year. So from that perspective, it's a great opportunity for small businesses to try to be proactive. If they have plans for growth, the time is now to try to secure the financing at more favorable terms. The longer they wait, and to the earlier point, if you have an opportunity to grow your business and you've been thinking about it, the longer you wait, most likely the costs are going to be greater, not only in terms of materials, construction, real estate, but also interests. So there should be a sense of urgency in those plans.
That's great. Good. Okay.
All right. So it's great. It was a great conversation, great topics, and I hope that our small business friends continue to do well. It's a great economy and that we're heading into, and I think that more and more people are starting to get more and more confident and comfortable with the way things are shaping up, and it'll be great to see the small business sector, which is such an important sector of the economy, do well. So It's been great, Eli, and,
Likewise.
having this whole discussion series over the past few months. So
Yeah, terrific. Well, it's great to have done it with you, and I look forward to hopefully maybe seeing you in the not too distant future face to
in
face.
person
Yeah,
at some point.
in person.